What if I told you that the most persuasive part of your story is not the success? It's not the trophy. It's not the win or the arrival. It's the moment that your audience sees themselves in you, when they feel seen, understood, safe, and led. See, here's what most people get dead wrong about persuasion. They think it's about having better facts, about having sharper logic or tighter talking points. But the human brain, it doesn't work that way. It's not wired to be swayed by logic. It's wired to feel first and rationalize second. So if you're trying to sell with bullet points, if you're trying to teach, coach, or convince people using pure information, and you're wondering why it's not landing the way it should, this episode is your wake-up call. Because today we're diving into the real reason that stories sell. It's not because they sound good, not because they entertain, but because they go underneath resistance and they trigger a visceral response that makes people trust you, connect with you, and say yes before they even realize why. Now, if you're new around here, you've found your way to the Next Stage Speaker Success Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Lord Al Jensen, the founder of Next Stage Communications. Since 1974, I've delivered more than 7,500 talks. I've coached TEDx speakers, I've trained attorneys and authors, guided pastors and politicians, and I've walked out of high-level storytelling competitions, not just with applause, but with the kind of top honors that tells you, hey, this guy knows what moves an audience. And what I've seen over and over in boardrooms, in back rooms, and in ballrooms is that real influence does not come from being the smartest person in the room. It comes from being the person who can tell the story that hits the heart. In this episode, I'm going to show you why logical arguments often backfire and how stories bypass that mental filter. I'm going to show you what's happening inside your audience's brain during a really good story and how to structure your own persuasive stories using proven psychology, and how to bridge from your story into your offer without sounding like a pushy marketer. And if you want a real shortcut, I've put together a no-cost resource for you called the Story Persuasion Blueprint. It gives you key elements of story-based persuasion, plus plug-and-play prompts so you can craft your own. You'll find the link in the show notes. This episode's not just about telling better stories. It's about using story to build belief, to drive decisions, and move people both emotionally and strategically. So let's get to it. Let's get brutally honest about something that's hurting a lot of well-meaning entrepreneurs, coaches, and speakers. They think that they're struggling to sell because they need better copy. They need better funnels or better headlines, a better way to explain their process. And yeah, those things matter. But if you're relying on a well-reasoned pitch, if you're trying to sell a transformation with logic, statistics, or bullet points, you're playing the wrong game. Because the human brain, the one sitting in your audience, does not buy with logic. It buys with emotion. It buys with identity, and it buys through your story. Let me show you why that's true and how it plays out in every sales call, every webinar or conversation where you're trying to move someone from curiosity to commitment. When someone hears a pitch that's built on logic alone, their brain lights up in one place. It's the language processing center. It interprets the words. That's it. But when they hear a story, well, multiple regions of the brain activate simultaneously. The sensory cortex, they feel the tension. The motor cortex, they imagine the action. The amygdala, they process emotion. And most importantly, the mirror neuron system, the part that says, I relate to this. I've been there. That could be me. That's called narrative transportation. And it's one of the most powerful persuasion mechanisms that we know of. When someone is immersed in your story, they don't just hear what happened to you. They start imagining what could happen for them. That's when skepticism fades, and that's when the need for proof drops. That's when people stop analyzing and start feeling. And here's the kicker. Once emotion takes the lead, logic follows. You see, logic isn't useless. It's just not where persuasion begins. It's where justification happens. Once someone feels that you're the right coach, or that your product gets them, or that your story speaks to their unspoken frustration or hope, then and only then will they start hunting for facts to confirm the decision their heart has already made. That's why story is your most valuable tool, not to entertain, but to bypass resistance and shift identity. And you want to know why this matters so much? Because every audience, whether it's one person on a Zoom call or 1,000 people in a ballroom, they have a wall up. They've been burned. They've heard the pitch before. They've tried and failed. They've been promised transformation and they've walked away empty-handed. So when you come in with, well, here's my offer, here's the proof, here's the result, that wall stays up. But when you come in with, let me tell you what it looked like the day that I almost gave up. Let me take you back to the moment when nothing was working. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was stuck right where you are. Now they're listening. Now they're leaning in, and now they're saying, hey, wait a minute, this person gets it. Maybe they get me. That's the emotional entry point that logic just can't create. Not about drama. It's not about exaggeration. It's about empathy. It's about resonance. It's about being a guide, not a guru. And the minute your audience feels that emotional resonance, they stop seeing you as someone trying to sell them something, and they start seeing you as someone who can lead them somewhere. Now, here's a real example from a coaching client that I worked with just a couple months ago. She was pitching a productivity program to burned out entrepreneurs. And her original pitch was all logic. You'll reclaim 10 hours per week. You'll get a customized calendar. You'll build habits that stick. It was clean, it was sharp, and it was totally forgettable. We rewrote her core message using a simple story, a true moment where she was late picking up her kid from daycare because she had lost track of time. She was buried in a task list that she never finished. She told the story of sitting in the parking lot, watching other parents walk out, and realizing she didn't have a time management problem. She had a values clarity problem. Same offer, same benefits, but a completely different impact. People didn't just say, well, that's smart. They said, that's me. She doubled her close rate, not because her product changed, but because her story allowed people to see themselves in the problem and to believe in the possibility of change. And that's the power of a persuasive story. Coming up next, I'm going to give you a 5-part story structure that you can plug into your own messaging, whether you're writing an email, recording a podcast, or pitching your offer live. And if you're the kind of person who learns by doing, download the Story Persuasion Blueprint from the show notes. It's got prompts and examples and frameworks that you can start using today. Because once you learn how to tell a story that moves people emotionally, You will never go back to pitching with bullet points again. All right, now that we've unpacked why stories work, let's talk about how to tell one that actually sells. Because here's the trap that most speakers and coaches fall into. They either ramble through a long, unfocused story with no direction, or they overshare, turning a powerful teaching moment into an emotional dump. Neither of those builds trust, neither creates belief, and neither moves people to act. But when you use the right structure, one that follows the brain's natural pattern for emotional connection and resolution, you create what I call a persuasive story. Now, it's not just a story that people enjoy. It's a story they remember, one that makes them think, this person gets me, and I trust where they're leading. So here's the structure. Number one, a shared struggle. You start not with the win, but with the problem. The moment where you were stuck, you were uncertain, frustrated, or afraid. This is where your audience sees themselves in you. If they don't feel like you've been where they are, they won't believe that you can help them get to where they want to go. No need to dramatize it. Just make it real. As an example, I remember staring at my inbox with 19 unread messages from prospects, but no clue how to follow up without sounding desperate. That line, that's more persuasive than 3 paragraphs of proof. Step 2, the emotional pivot. This is the moment that something shifts. It's not when everything's fixed, but when your perspective changes. You see something that you didn't see before. You realize you can't keep doing things the old way. You make a decision. This is the turning point, emotionally, mentally, or behaviorally. And it's where the audience starts to feel that change is possible for them too. Number 3, relatable action. After the insight, what did you do? Not the perfect plan, but the first step, the messy, human, honest move forward. As an example, I deleted my entire follow-up sequence and rewrote one email, just one. That shows movement, it shows courage, and it creates belief that your audience can take a step too. Number 4, a moment of clarity. Here's where you articulate what the experience taught you, but not in guru language. Make it clear. Make it emotionally resonant. Speak from the heart, not from the pedestal. As an example, that's when I realized it's not about saying the perfect thing. It's about saying the real thing to the right person. That kind of clarity sticks. And number 5, audience-centered takeaway. Now, turn the lesson outward. What does this mean for them? Why did you tell this story today, in this moment, and to this audience? The best persuasive stories don't end with, so that's how I figured it out. They end with, and that's why I'm here to tell you that you don't have to keep struggling in silence. There's a better way. I've walked it, and I can show you. So that's the full 5-part persuasive story framework. Number 1, shared struggle. Number 2, emotional pivot. 3, relatable action. 4, moment of clarity. And number 5, audience-centered takeaway. It's short, it's powerful, and more importantly, it works. You can use it in sales calls, webinar openings, keynote transitions, podcast interviews, and on-stage pitches. Anywhere that you need to build trust fast and guide someone towards a decision that will improve their life. Coming up next, I'll show you how to deploy these stories strategically, so you're not just telling good stories randomly, but you're using them to create momentum towards your offer. And again, if you want to build one of these stories today, grab the story persuasion blueprint in the show notes. It's got this framework, it's got fill-in-the-blank prompts and examples to shortcut your first persuasive story, really in under 15 minutes. We're not just telling stories to sound interesting. We're telling stories to change beliefs, to shift emotions, and move people forward. And once you understand how to shape a story like that, one that starts with a shared struggle and ends with a takeaway that they can't forget, then you've got more than a story. You've got a conversion tool. You've got a story that earns belief and leads people to act. Coming up next, I'll show you where to use these stories strategically so that you're not just sharing to sound good, you're sharing to guide decisions and drive results. All right, you got the psychology, you got the structure. Now let's talk about where and when to use your persuasive stories for maximum impact. Because a great story told at the wrong time doesn't convert, doesn't land, doesn't move people. But the right story at the right moment, that's when trust deepens. That's when objections soften and buying decisions happen naturally. Here's where story does its best work. Before the pitch, not after. Most people save the story for after they've made the offer, but by then, resistance is already high. Use your story as a bridge, not a bonus. Let it frame the problem and the emotional stakes before you ever mention the solution. It turns your pitch into a natural next step. Use it during teaching when resistance creeps in. When you're teaching something new, people naturally start doubting. Will this work for me? Can I really do this? That's when to drop in a story. It doesn't just reinforce the lesson, it lowers the guard and it reopens belief. Use it in sales conversations to address objections indirectly. Instead of countering objections with logic, use story to speak to the heart. Tell about a time you or a client had that same hesitation and what shifted. They'll see their concern in a new light without you having to convince them. So, what now? Pick one of your offers and then ask yourself, what belief needs to shift before someone says yes? What emotional tension are they feeling? What story could speak to that exact moment? Shape that story using the 5-part framework and plug it in where it matters most. And hey, you don't have to wing it. Grab that story persuasion blueprint in the show notes. It's free, it's fast, and it'll help you pull out and polish your next persuasive story today with plug-and-play prompts and real examples. And if you're ready to take the full step forward, I've created a mini course just for you. It's called the Why Stories Sell mini course and walks you through this entire process, the psychology, the framework, the story deployment strategy, the emotional triggers behind action, all of it. And it's only $37. You can read and apply the lessons in just a few hours, not weeks. Link for that? It's in the show notes. If you want to teach, sell, or lead more powerfully, your story is the key. Let's help you unlock it. If this episode has sparked something for you, subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Drop a comment or a quick review, and share this with the speakers, coaches, and leaders in your world who need to stop pushing information and start leading with connection. Because your story, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be true, intentional, and well-shaped. And when you do that, you don't just stand out. You become the guide they trust. I'm Lord Al Jensen, speaker, storyteller, and presentation mentor, and I can't wait to see you on the next stage.